Forklifts are literally the backbone to America. You can find them everywhere. Unfortunately, for my boy Brandon, it looks like his forklift's been getting thrashed around in a warehouse for the past 30 years. My name's Brandon, and he doesn't know it yet, but I'm about to pimp his forklift. My name's Brandon, I'm 22 years old, and this is my 1993 Toyota forklift. I've been driving forklifts ever since I was about 3 years old, so I'm practically one of the best forklift operators out there. These companies are constantly calling me whenever they have a really critical piece of equipment that needs moved. Hey, you think it's high enough to clear that bump? You don't think they'll notice, do you? Now, since I am so important and I'm constantly using this thing, she is a little banged up. The paint's got more chips than a bag of Ruffles. Now, you also notice that the engine cover and seat are missing, and that's just because I got to jiggle the neutral safety switch before I start it. But honestly, it's really not all that bad. I just sit right here on the battery, and I can literally access everything I need to right from here. Now, the tires might have some cracks and maybe some chips out of them, but they haven't fallen off yet.
Yeah, Brandon, I know him. Takes so much pride in that piece of junk forklift, you know. He really needs to find other ways to value himself, because that thing is just, it's no good, and I know quality.
Some of the paint's coming off, and she does have some rust, but we just call it surface rust in the industry. Now, the tank on this thing was so old that no one would fill it, so we got a new one. I don't think it needs it, but everyone keeps telling me this thing's whack, so please, busted beaters, pimp my forklift. So this forklift has come a long way, but one thing that's been really bothering me is the wiring for the aftermarket accessories. Well, let's just say they need some work. So the cab on this thing is completely open, so why in the world do we have a little electric heater here? What's that supposed to do? I mean, it works, but it's nothing more than just like a little hand warmer. So I was trying to figure out the wiring on the other end, and it just wasn't making sense to me at all. So on the battery end, here's the two fuses. One of these was for the heater, and one of these is for like the auxiliary pod lights. Well, they tied both of these into this little double cable here, and one of these is black, one of them's red, but they're both giving positive power to that other end. So don't get me wrong, it works, but you're definitely not making it easier on yourself if something goes wrong, and you're not making it easy on the next guy, that's for sure. So I'm just planning on kind of starting from square one, redoing everything myself. So I pulled out this dash. I want to replace some of these lights with LEDs, and I kid you not, guys. Yeah, so there's one. Oh, we got a light bulb in that one. Nope, we don't got a light bulb in this one. Two of these warning lights don't have light bulbs. That's kind of suspicious. I mean, 3 out of 5 ain't bad. All right, guys, so I took all 3 of the good bulbs and I put them in our indicator lights. I'm just kind of curious to see what's actually going to happen here. Okay, so all 3 of them turn on with the engine off. Let's turn it over and see what they do. No way. So the oil pressure light, that turned off. That one had the bulb. And the 2 that didn't have the bulb, so the air filter and the battery, both of those are still on. So either some mechanic came along and they're like, yeah, sure, I'll fix your problem, and just pulled the bulbs out, or someone was just tired of seeing these lights on and they pulled them out themselves. But that's hilarious. So I got a bunch of these LED bulbs from working on the Moto 4 actually. So I'm gonna go ahead and just slap them on in here. Every single bulb has been replaced, so let's go ahead and see what she does. Dash is back together. All that wiring on the ground is literally just for these pods up top. And then these lower pods, they're tied into the original wiring of the lights that came on this forklift. So I don't know if I'm gonna keep these or not, but either way, I'm gonna take them off, cut the wires, because I do wanna, at the very least, redo those. Then I'm gonna do some Amazon shopping and see if I can find anything that I like better. Alrighty guys, so the forklift is looking pretty empty. It's actually starting to rain right now. Here's that old messy wiring harness I pulled out, so that's awesome. Gives us a nice clean slate to work with. Now I am gonna do some shopping. All I want to do is put something on this that's cool. May end up using some of the old lights. We'll see. I gotta get inside. First I gotta cover my baby. So this forklift's cool and all, but it's not exactly unique. There's gotta be thousands of those machines still running around, so today, my goal is to make it one of a kind. So I spent several hours last night creating this wire diagram to help me along. I got one of the nicest relay boxes I've ever bought, and I got it with the wiring harness. I figured that would save me some time. I got a circuit breaker to make sure our wiring's safe. Some reverse lights, they're just standard little floodlights. Then the off-roading community, they call them rock lights. Your more sporty cars, they call it underglow. But I think on a forklift, the most suiting name for these lights is going to be ground effect lights. There are a lot more parts on order, but this is what came in, so this is what we're starting with. So I'm going to go ahead and start with these reverse lights. There are 2 of them, and they're going to get mounted like so. So the brackets that come with these lights are meant to be used where the light is mounted on top of the surface. Now I want to mount the light in front of that actual cage, and they are just not long enough, so I get to make custom brackets. So you're about to witness me drilling a bunch of holes into this safety cage. Don't say I could recommend doing that, and I'm pretty sure if you were like a legitimate shop where OSHA's coming in there, they'd probably be pretty upset, and they might even take your forklift out of service, but I'm just an idiot in his garage, so I think I'll be A-okay. But just thought I'd mention it. Probably shouldn't modify safety devices. We're gonna be here for a minute. This is 5/8 flat stock. So we got a lot of drilling to do. All right, 1 light down, 1 to go. What do you mean I bent a bit? No, I didn't. Not too bad if I say so myself. These lights are mounted. Now we do have some additional lights coming, and these little plates here are gonna need cut off. We need this nice and flush. Well, you guys, we had a slight little incident this morning, so I came out here fully prepared to work on the forklift for the entire day and make a ton of progress on it, but I wanted to clean up my work area a little bit beforehand. So I had that piece of Corian that was broken. I tried using it to get the engine from the garage to outside, but when the engine slipped, it ended up snapping this piece. So I needed to break this up further to get it into the trash. So I'm over here smacking it with a hammer, and one of those pieces broke off, smacked me right in the mouth, and split my lip wide open. So I got to spend my entire morning in urgent care getting this thing glued back together. So you're just gonna have to deal with this beautiful face for a while. But on a much more positive note, we got our distribution block, we got custom switches with a switch box, we got our tail lights, we got all our driving lights we're gonna need, we got strobe lights and a fire extinguisher and a mount for it. So we're ready to rock and roll. So this step here is completely unnecessary, but I'm gonna wire in my own switches. I really like these custom ones from Over the River and Through the Woods. You get to choose your own little logo, and then you also get to choose your custom text, and it can say exactly what you want. So we're gonna rewire this puppy. So besides this just looking super clean, I did need a momentary switch for the strobe mode. So in order to change the mode of the strobe lights, you got to connect one of those wires to ground for less than 1 second. So being able just to tap that to change the mode is going to be perfect, as opposed to having a switch that turns off and on. So the way this thing was originally wired is your bottom row of lights here on the switches, your USB and the switch power, were all on the exact same circuit. So the way I believe they intended this to be used is you would hook this up to your ignition source, and that way when you turn your key on, you would have your USB power, your switch power, and the lights would turn on. Now I don't want to do that because when you flip the key into the run position, even with the engine off on that forklift, it'll automatically just start that hour meter, and it'll be putting hours on the machine. Now I want to be able to use the lights with the forklift completely off. That way I'm not running the hour meter if the engine's not running. So I'm going to break it out so that the bottom row of lights will turn on with the ignition. The switches will always have power even with that ignition switch off. And then I have a separate relay that's connected to the USB. That way that'll be a fused circuit. So we have this red circuit along the bottom here, that's for your switch power. This yellow wire here is for strobe mode. So now we just need to give power to the last 5 switches. May as well test this out before I get it completely wired up and find out that I did it wrong. I think we're good to go. So I just got these lights sitting in there for now, but this is what I plan on doing for both of the front lights. I'm probably gonna have to make a custom mount. But I do want one of the lights pointed down towards the ground because that's where 90% of your stuff's going to be happening, right there where the forks are. And then I got another set that's kind of throwing some light out. Now that our switch is all wired up, we just need to find a place to mount it. The place I like the best is up here in this corner. It's really out of the way. Should be pretty simple to mount. I'm just going to weld a piece of sheet metal across the top there with some nuts on the back of it. Got to keep as much metal out of my mouth as possible today. Phew, not too bad. So the next thing is to go ahead and get all these strobe lights installed. I'm probably just going to mount them like so onto the frame. So I just drilled out the middle hole to fit the wires, and then I drilled and tapped 2 holes to actually mount it to the frame of this thing. So 1 down, 7 to go. I'm just going to grind it out, but I'll see you when I'm done. So there you have it, guys. I got the lights mounted low in the front because we do have the pod lights that get mounted up here. Everything turned out pretty good except for this one. I wanted to keep everything perfectly in line and I just didn't even think about this hole. So there's no bolt in the bottom, but we'll get that fixed tomorrow. Man, if it wasn't for the mast, this thing would easily fit in here. So I definitely could have just moved that light up. It would have been so much easier, but I would have known that that was off and that would have really bugged me. So what I am gonna do is I have this piece of 3/16 flat stock and it's the same thickness as the cage. I'm gonna cut out a little section of it and get it welded right in here, and that'll give us enough meat to drill that hole. Last strobe light is mounted and drilled. Now this hole is a little bit smaller. I believe this is like an intake hole. So the frame runs the whole way down and then the air filter box ties into the frame. So it's drawing air in just from this frame. Now if you look at the original forklifts, there was a little cover on here. So we might be making one to go over top of our hole as well. We'll come back to that though. I do want to get these tail lights mounted. I'm thinking I'm going to use these original holes. The bottom one will actually get used to feed these wires in. And then the other holes are just gonna get covered up by this light. So we'll feed the wires in. We'll have to drill that out a little bit bigger so this can sit nice and flush, and we'll mount them just like so. Tail lights are mounted. So this thing did have a fire extinguisher mount on it. It was one of those cheap little metal ones that came with a fire extinguisher. I really like the industrial look of the fire extinguisher. Think it could be really useful. So we are upgrading fire extinguisher with one of the quick release mounts. This is just a cheap one off Amazon. I've always wanted to try one of these out, so what better time to do it than now? And whoever mounted that old mount stripped out these holes really bad. So I'm gonna go ahead, weld these shut, drill some new ones for our new mount. Truly is the little things in life. I don't know why, but this makes me so happy. That mount looks so good and easily accessible. I think after that it is only appropriate to update our impact rating. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start working on a cardboard template to mount both of the light pods in the cage. It's extremely tight, so this might be a little difficult. So I've determined it is possible to create a bracket to stuff both of the lights in this cage, but what I'm running into is it is extremely hard to find a way to actually mount the lights to this bracket, mount this bracket to the cage, and then still have clearances to get to the bolts to mount the cage to the forklift. So slight change of plan. We're just gonna cut the cage apart and extend it. That way we'll be able to use the original mounts that came with the lights, and it should all fit in there the way we want it to. I need to bend these rods and get them to line up. I did not want anything bending here, so I just kind of welded this tube on just to hold everything nice and flat while we get these bent into place and welded. I'm gonna go ahead and use the torch to soften up these corners. That way when I bend it, it bends on that radius, as opposed to just forcing it and it's gonna bend down here. Not too bad. There's a lot more room in there. I think that'll work out much better for us. The worst part about doing stuff like this is knowing you still got one more to do. Both of the guards are finally done. Now, something that's been bothering me is these holes on the bottom are not centered, so I'm gonna go ahead and fill those in and center them, and they're also massive, so I'll be able to re-drill them to the actual size I need. One more hole, we can call this done. So was all that work worth it to mount a couple of lights? Not sure. I'm gonna set these aside and just pretend this never happened. So according to my wiring diagram here, there are 4 basic components that I need to mount somewhere on the forklift. I got this relay block, this distribution block, the circuit breaker, and then I also have the controller for our ground effect lights. So right now I'm thinking the best place to mount all those components is gonna be underneath this engine cover here. So I'm gonna pull the seat off to make this a little easier to work with, and we'll see if we can get it to fit. So there's actually a broken bolt on this hinge, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that fixed while I'm here. This controller box is going to get mounted with these M2 screws, which are absolutely tiny, and I am going to attempt to weld on and capture these nuts, but that's how small they are. Is it going to work? I doubt it. Actually, it turned out pretty good. Our electrical box is finally done, and it's kind of a goofy design, but hear me out. So if I ever needed to work on anything major on the forklift, it's so much easier with this engine cover off. So I wanted all the electronics just to bolt to the engine cover. That way I can just pull this whole electrical box off. This will stay with the engine and the forklift, and then I can pull the cover off separately. Otherwise, if this is permanently attached, now I have to unwire everything just to pull this engine cover off, and that didn't seem like a good idea. That's going to be it for this video. On the next one, we're going to be just touching up a few things and finally painting the forklift. So that might be a week, might be a month, might be a year. I don't know when that video will come out, but I'll see you then.